to MovieNaut, where we will discuss cult classic movies from various genres and decades. Stay tuned for this episode. All right, we're here with MovieNaut episode 4. We're going to be talking about 90s cult movies. Doesn't matter what the genre is, we just kind of span whatever it is, from the 90s. And we have a guest today, Jen, and I'll let her go first with her first choice.
My first choice. Okay. So out of the 5 I have, and this is the one that I actually have like a little bit of notes on that I purely pulled out of IMDb, but and that is Dead Alive, or as well as known as Brain Dead in some countries, from 1992. So I got into this movie purely out of watching like Bravo's 100 Scariest Movie Moments, and notice like just hearing like it's one of the bloodiest movies of all time. You get intrigued. You're like, how is it bloody? And growing up around Scream and Saw and living in Stephen King's Maine, you wonder like, okay, what's the bloodiest thing? And sure enough, they're not wrong. When it is the bloodiest movie I've ever seen, and will probably ever watch in my whole life. The fact of the matter is that they used 300 liters of fake blood in just the final scene alone. And so in the final scene alone, there's a huge, um, just like the last 20 minutes is just pure black comedy and horror. And I think that's a very much a gimmick thing of Peter Jackson, who directed this movie. This is one of his first movies he ever directed when he was, just known as the New Zealand director at the time. Because I think afterwards is when he filmed. I can't remember the name of the title of the movie, but it's basically the movie about the two best friends that kill one of their mothers because they were being separated from each other. But this is a movie that I use to test people. And what I mean by that is like, when I say I like horror, they're like, oh, well, I like Scream too. Oh, I like Halloween. I'm like, you want to see some real shit? And I put on Dead Alive. And if they can get like the black comedy of it, and the black comedy in this movie is very much the scenes with, I would just say the one scene purely is the playground scene where he has to take the mutant baby child to go play in the playground. And there's so much physical comedy happening with the swing sets and chasing the baby around so it doesn't affect another baby that's by the sandbox and all these other gimmicks. If you haven't heard of this movie, the premise of it is that a young man's mother is bitten by this very, I would just say it's a mutated rat monkey.
Yeah.
It's nothing else. It's very much like a claymation monkey. Like if you took like Will Benton's claymation from the 80s, like the like Pee Wee Herman stuff, that's what the monkey was. And so she gets bit and gets sick and dies. And a whole lot of things ensues where the mother ends up coming back to life and starts killing and eating dogs and having her ear fall into like a thing of porridge and her eating it in front of like the PTA and nurse. So starts eating, the nurses start eating the young man's friends, and eventually neighbors, and eventually a big party that the uncle hosts, who ends up getting the house instead of the son, who's the young man. So um that I feel like it's a classic 90s movie in a way because of the pure idea of like I'm just going to throw in my best my Python bits at 300 liters of fake blood and a budget that any New Zealand studio can give me, and I'm Peter Jackson. And so it's very much of a, and it's so weird to think about because when we think of Peter Jackson, we think of Lord of the Rings, we think of The Hobbit, we think of all of his recent stuff. You don't think of Peter Jackson in horror. You think of
No.
it action and adventure and whatnot. So it's just something that interesting to throw at. It's just, and that kind of expands on the plate about, being a director is exploring like, hey, I did a little bit of this. Maybe I want to go into this action or I want to go into this adventure and whatnot. So but yeah, classic 90s, very much so. And it's very much like a child, like if you grew up in the 70s, you won't understand the comedy I'm putting in for this 90s movie. So like some 70s in a way of like if someone who wasn't in the 70s, I wasn't even conceived or not. I was in 99. But people that had the PBS and they only got my Python on or like Doctor Who and that's it. And so it's like just throwing that out there. So but
I,
yeah, so that's my first movie is Dead Alive.
yeah, that's a good one. I watched, and it's also one of the movies that goes out of print every time they put it into print. It just
Oh yeah, with
immediately.
the amount of every time it's like calling it a video nasty, like in England when they try to like ban Evil Dead from ever going on to VHS in England because it was a video nasty. So
Oh yeah. All right, Gary, you're up.
Okay, first off, I wanted to mention there are a couple here that would have made my list, except I did them in the horror movie one last time because I always just go with horror movies anyway. But the two that would have made the list this time were In the Mouth of Madness and Event Horizon. But since I talked about those at the Halloween one, I'll not include them. One that did almost make that list but didn't quite was Candyman, which will be my first one for tonight. And that movie to me is just a piece of art. I mean, it's a horror film, obviously, and it's Clive Barker, but it's also like almost a fantasy fable kind of thing. And everything about it is just beautiful. The way the cinematography, the music, everything. It's like a piece of artwork, and yet it's scary. And then, of course, you got Tony Todd as Candyman. How can you go wrong with that? And Cabrini Green, which I'm in Illinois, so I've been past Cabrini Green when it was still standing several times. Never been there, but I've been past it. So it has a connection to me with that. But just in general, it's just such a brilliant movie. And what's interesting is I've seen people who think now that the whole saying Candyman into a mirror thing is a real thing, like a real legend, just because it came out of Clive Barker and it was made into a movie, and now they believe it's a real thing. So it's kind of crazy that he had that kind of influence on society with it.
Oh yeah, pop culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, I finally watched that one not too long ago, and I was rather impressed. It is a very good one.
I think the most interesting thing about that too is like the role that Tony had to play and the way that he is also, I think he's like a method actor too. So it's like if he has to do like put bees in his mouth, he's gonna put bees in his mouth.
Oh, that's right. I heard he got stung multiple times.
Oh yeah, and he's I recently watched because Shudder just released like 100 scariest movie moments, and Tony was saying about that scene alone was that like he said he's like, well, I'm a method actor. I went to acting schools, and he told us is like some the fear you have to play on and pretty much just work with that fear of his. But it's also like he's like your job as being an actor. If they're telling you to do something, you got to do it. So He was like, yeah, I have to put bees in my mouth. I had to put bees in my mouth.
Yeah, and
That's
that soundtrack. Oh my God.
oh yeah, that music is just it is just perfect for the movie, and it's just beautiful music, very haunting.
Yeah. All right, Bill.
The actors are crazy.
What's that?
Method actors are crazy. They have to, I like method actors because it's almost like what pro wrestlers used to be. You have to be in character at all times while they're making the film anyway. Which we're gonna get back to that later in my list, by the way. But anyway, my first movie that I wanted to talk about is Psycho 4: The Beginning. I'm gonna go chronologically again, and I'm gonna admit right now, I'm at this moment still undecided about my fifth film. But anyway, I have two that I'm not sure which one I'm going to go with. We'll see what I decide by the time I get there. But anyway, Psycho 4: The Beginning is very interesting. And I don't, Psycho is another one of those movies a lot of people say it's a work of art. It's top 100 movies of all time, according to the AFI. And I think in AFI's top thrillers, I think it's in the top three. It might even be number one. I haven't checked recently, but it's way up there. So, how can you do a Psycho sequel? These things actually hold up better than they have any right to. All of them actually are decent. And the story that I heard, the reason that they never did a Psycho sequel until the early 80s was Alfred Hitchcock owned the rights to Psycho, not the author who wrote the book, Robert Bloch. And after he died in 1980 or 82, that's when they went ahead and started making sequels. So that's kind of how that came about. And the other interesting thing is Robert Bloch, who wrote the original Psycho, the novel, which I have read and is very much like the movie, except for the shower scene is a little bit different. I'll just tell you that slightly. But he actually did write sequels to Psycho novels, which I have not gotten my hands on, but that now goes onto my bucket list of trying to find. But one thing anybody should know about Psycho, well, first of all, Anthony Perkins comes back to reprise his role. And actually, even though this one's actually supposed to be a prequel, they actually made him look fairly young, even though he's got to be, 30 years older, 40 years older, 30 years older, 30 years older. I teach English, not math. But yeah, Anthony Perkins comes back, and he's actually in all of the sequels. My only complaint, and this is actually not a spoiler, this is actually an anti-spoiler, because if you're like me and have seen the original Psycho 500 times, you know every scene and every line. They actually change what should have happened in the end that they talk about in the original movie. It's changed just a little bit, so don't expect the ending to be exact. But all of those Psycho sequels, like I say, they hold up better than they have any right to. Still not as good as the original, obviously, never going to be, but they're better than they have any right to anyway. But that was the first one I wanted to go over.
I was going to say the trouble with the first Psycho is that you can only ever see it once, or the first time once.
Well, yeah, you can only see it the first time you watch it, it's only once. Yeah.
Yeah, because you can never see it again.
Right.
Because you know what happens. But we're big on Psycho movies in this house because Psycho is my wife's favorite movie, and she loves all the sequels too.
Right.
Yeah, I'm a big Hitchcock fan. And I got my wife into Hitchcock, and I'm working on my daughter. She likes mostly newer movies. She's only 17, but one of her favorites actually is Psycho and Amityville Horror, like the two favorites that at least I've introduced her to, at least as far as older ones anyway. Classic camp, I do mostly older stuff, but I have gotten her into those two anyway.
All right. Well, okay. My first choice. I'm doing mine differently this time. I'm going to do them in the year that they were released, and this was 1990. Frankenstein Unbound. This is where they take the classic Frankenstein movie and then they add a little bit of time travel to it. They start off in the future, which I just noticed the date. It's 2031, so we're getting there pretty close. And it has the John Hurt's character. He's doing some scientific experiment, and then and he goes back to the time that Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein. And the Frankenstein monster does not look like the classic one from the Universal. It kind of looks more closer to the Hammer film monster. And it just was, I remember seeing it on VHS. I rented it because I was going, Frankenstein Unbound. That's going to be kind of an interesting take on it. You know, I read the back of it, and I was like, going, okay, I'll give it a chance. I mean, has John Hurt in it, you know, and Raul Julia, and it just goes the idea of this Frankenstein monster going through time. You know, the monster it ends off in like a desolate area, you know, like I think it's even further into the future, you know. And I revisit this one every so often, and then when we decided to do the '90s one, I was like, wait a second, I think that's a '90s film. You know, I had to be sure, and I go, oh yeah, it is. And so that's my first choice.
That is a good one. That's one that I do revisit every once in a while myself. And actually, the Frankenstein monster is much closer to the way Mary Shelley describes him in the novel, in that film.
And also the whole bolts on the neck thing, Universal owns that whole thing, and I think they still have like another 4 or 5 years they own it, and if you put it out there, they will come after you.
Probably so. And the flat top too, I think.
Yes, the flat top. Yeah.
But something else we should mention, that's a Roger Corman directed. He didn't direct a lot of movies after the 60s, and he comes back to actually direct that one, and as well as produce. One of my favorite directors.
Yeah, that's one of the cool things. Some of his movies kind of get into the campy side of it. But this one had a little kind of more of a serious tone to it. You know.
It does. Especially his later work usually got a little campier, so it is kind of interesting that he kept this one pretty serious.
Yeah, that's what.
He still produced a lot after the 60s, but he didn't direct a lot. So it's, you know, it's interesting that he chose this one to direct.
Yeah.
I think he's still producing movies today, actually.
I think he's going to produce them until he dies.
Yeah. He's in his 90s.
I wouldn't be
any day now.
I wouldn't be surprised if he dies while he's in the producer chair.
Right. Yeah, I wouldn't either, actually.
That would be a good movie right there.
Either that or he keeps producing films after he dies.
Now you're talking.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Dead producer.
Some sort of like Beetlejuice scene where they're on The Office. It's just him in the studio, still producing.
That'd be funny.
Yeah. All right. You're up, Jen.
All righty. So I'm gonna go into. I have like 4 other movies that it's like a wild card situation. I'm like, okay, I could do any single one of these because I absolutely love all of them. But I'm just gonna wild carded The Crow from 1994. And this movie kind of holds a special place to my heart because I would like religiously watch this movie after school for a year solid. And I also remember I dressed up as the Crow going to school once. It was for Halloween, and I did like the black duct tape around my arms and stuff, and like the duct tape cord. I would say it's a corset because it was kind of a cinch situation and the twine and everything. And of course, we have to, say the horse in the room, Brandon Lee, and the curse that's on that film. And and you have to feel bad for the guy who played Fun Boy. And I can't get the actor's name right now, but probably gonna look it up just right now so I can pay respects, because I know he recently passed away. And like, I think one of the things he said, like, he never really fully recovered when that happened, because he still believed that he was the reason. Michael Massey
Oh, yes.
was, yes, Michael Massey. So he was like, his character, and the scene was supposed to be like during the flashback of like the night that they both, like, the character of Eric Draven and his girlfriend Shelley Webster died. It was a scene where Eric was supposed to open the door, and he had like a bag of groceries and whatnot, and sees what's going on, and the character of Fun Boy is supposed to shoot him right in the chest. And of course, with what happened, um, I I'm not gonna say like specifically because I don't want to get it wrong, but just so it was something along the lines of like he got shot, and and he died on the set. But the idea that they were able to continue on as like a way to be able to, in memory of him, I find that's not a lot of things studios do. But granted, they don't have what happened on an everyday situation, but they still continue on. And even by the request of the widow, I believe, was also like requesting that the studio continue on, because they know, like, she knew that Brandon would have been wanting that to be the end result. And this is a movie that's based on the comic of the same name, and I believe the author came to Maine a few years ago, and I wasn't able to meet him, but I remember reading about his backstory of like being able to write this in the terms of grief. Because when he wrote this was right after, in his life, he had a girlfriend, and girlfriend died from a car accident because of a drunk driver. And he had this anger in him, and he had so much grief that he put it into writing, and that led to The Crow. And it's something along the lines of like, it's a very human experience that everyone goes through. It's a grief. It could be the grief, it could be anger, it could be things happening to good people that we have no control over. And this movie is very much about revenge, and it's like revenge, but it's also now for satisfaction is to do the rights, and then because of the wrongs that have been occurred. Because at the end, yes, he reunites with Shelley, but I think in the way of when he goes back, he's not the same though as the way of the very beginning, I would have to say. So and then the fact too, The Crow, there was like a bunch of, because it became so like a box office hit because of both the Brandon Lee incident, and because it was a good movie. And they're like, well, we need to do sequels, and of course we have a bunch of sequels that I don't say live up to it. The only thing that's lived up after The Crow would have to be either the sequel, but the only thing in the sequel has to be the soundtrack to for that sequel.
Right.
The soundtrack for the sequel is magnificent. You just have to forget about the movie. Um, and then I would have to say the Canadian TV series, the Stairway to Heaven, which I was so glad that they actually did a TV series, but it kind of branches into like that supernatural effect, I would like to call it, where they have the premise of the movie, the first few episodes, and then they're like, okay, why is Eric, the character of Eric Draven, still in the present? And it's filler episode after filler episode of like, well, he has to help solve this mystery and has to turn to the Crow to solve it. And it's very much like I said, supernatural, where it's like they go to different states to solve, you know, all the ghost or paranormal or supernatural in the title, things happening. But it's like Eric Draven is stuck in this one place. He can't leave the city, but he's stuck here. Why and how? So, but no, I would have to say another classic would be The Crow, and just like the significance of you can make a good comic, a movie from the comics. You can make it that it's sad. You can make it be serious. It doesn't have to be Batman 66. But yeah, that's my.
I love Batman 66, but it is a valid point.
Yeah.
It doesn't. Everything should not be Batman 66.
I love Batman 66 too, but my God, how can you get?
Yeah, I know, right? It's
You don't have
everything
to
should
be
not
carrying
be
around a very explosive bomb and going between
Yeah.
ships to know where to throw the bomb.
Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
Yes, that's the exact line.
Yeah. I can't believe that they still use live ammunition to make movies. I kind of thought that went out in the 30s, but you know.
Yeah.
No,
Oh, they still do.
They
Yeah, I
still
know.
do, like, you know, AKA the Alec Baldwin situation that
Exactly.
happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I
I
know.
think that they're blanks, but they're still the case.
There's
Well, in the Alec Baldwin one, I don't believe it was a blank, but I think if I remember right, what hit Jason Lee was the wadding from the blank, and it just hit him in the right spot and stopped his heart. I
Oh.
think, as I recall. But yeah, it was a blank, but those are still not completely undangerous, you know.
yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah, no, because I remember reading an article about like what extensively happened, and it was very much like they heard the sound and then automatically he just fell backwards and then wasn't getting up even after cut. And
Yeah.
then it was rushed to going hospital, and then what happened?
I know.
That's the only, and that scene I think is on screen, right? Or did they cut the scene?
No.
Right up to it, right?
I think it was right up to it, and or they reshot the scene with,
Okay.
you know, a stand-in.
Because one I remembered when you were talking about that is the whole Vic Morrow thing in Twilight Zone, and that scene is in the movie. They needed the scene for the movie, and it stayed in the movie.
I haven't seen that, but I have seen the behind the scenes of when it happened, and oh my gosh, it is so. It's terrifying. It very much is. And then you see like the list of stuff that they, you know, they broke this rule, they broke that rule, they broke all these other laws just to film this one scene for a Twilight Zone movie.
And you know what's
Right.
interesting was Vic Morrow was terrified of helicopters. He had an idea that he was going to die from a helicopter crash. So he's like, right before he got on it, he's like, I don't know why I signed on for this movie. I hate helicopters. He's like, everything's going to be okay though. And then he got on the copter, and yeah.
Yeah, no, like, yeah, no. And then the poor, oh my God, the children that he.
Oh, I know.
It was a scene where he had to cross a river, and he had the two kids around him, and then it just.
Yeah, no, that was. I think one of the very first instances that I heard of where someone was accidentally shot was there was a TV series in the 80s called Voyagers, and the older actor of there was a guy maybe in his 30s, and then there was a kid who was like maybe in his early teens, and they would travel through time. And one of the behind the scenes things, he was messing around with one of the prop guns, didn't know it was loaded with that wad, and he put it to his head, and it's like, it was like, holy crap. I mean, it's like, I don't want to go near a gun, because of that.
Also, you mentioned a curse. We should point out for anybody who's watching that there was the curse supposedly started with a game of what's the one I'm thinking of? The last Bruce Lee movie where he died during filming.
Game of Death.
Game of Death. Thank you. Supposedly it started there, but I think other I think other Bruce Lee children have made movies since then. So I don't, I'm not saying there's anything to the rumor of a curse, but
Right.
I think that's where the rumors of a curse started, is all I'm saying. Yeah, Game of Death, that had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, actually. But anyway.
Yeah. All right,
Okay, so
Jerry, you're up.
my second pick is kind of a weird one because I can't tell you how many times I've seen people just throw complete hate on this movie. It seems, if you look around the internet, it seems like nobody likes it. It's the 1990s remake of The Haunting, which I've never seen the original. But I absolutely love this movie. I mean, to me, it's sort of a gothic ghost story, but then it goes complete CGI and crazy at the end. And I love the fact that you get the feeling early on that maybe this psychiatrist is doing this to all these people, to screw with them, to test them. And then it turns out the place really is haunted. And, I love that about it. And I just think it's a really cool movie. I remember I saw it in the theater and I loved it so much that I went back and saw it like 2 or 3 more times in the theater. And then I see all these people hating on it. So
Oh yeah. Yeah, I remember that. I mean, I look at them as two different things. The original, if you hadn't seen it, I just like that they do a lot of, it's like people on the other side of the set were like making banging noises and stuff like
nice.
that. And it's like, and of course, being in black and white, it was like, oh, that added to the creepiness and everything. But yeah, that was good. The remake was good. I mean,
I haven't seen the remake, but I have seen the original. But I will say I'm not so attached to that particular original that I wouldn't be open to a remake.
I think
Right.
what a lot of people complain about the remake is the CGI. And okay, it was 1990 CGI, whatever. It wasn't that great, but at least they tried. And
Yeah.
I don't know. Come on. I used to watch old Doctor Who. I still watch old Doctor Who. I know what bad special effects look like, and just suspending disbelief.
Right, yeah. I get it. I think I mentioned one of our other episodes. Drop scenery versus the chroma key versus CGI. We all know it's not what it is. It's your imagination that brings it to life, really, no matter which one.
Exactly.
They're all about the same to me. Anyway, so my next one, I'm still in the same year as the first one. How about Tremors? They didn't do a whole lot of monster movies anymore. They were kind of so passe, the 50s and 60s, and then they came out with Tremors, and it was like, you can do monsters again.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really, really well-made monster movie out in, like in the West somewhere with the deserts and everything. It was definitely a throwback to things like the giant Gila monster, which I love, one of my favorite older ones. But you had the giant worms going through the town and destroying the buildings because they're going under and bringing up all the dirt and everything from underneath. And of course, you have Kevin Bacon, and you can't go wrong with Kevin Bacon, especially Kevin Bacon in the 90s. I mean, he was in everything, literally just any movie in the 90s. I'd be surprised if he's not in another one tonight here, at least in a small role. But that's a good, fun little monster movie. Kind of pseudo horror, not too scary, of course, but you can still do monsters, and I mean, the characters are still fighting for their lives, trying not to get eaten and hiding on top of the buildings and things.
I love the comedic aspect of the Tremors movies, especially that first one. And that one is, the whole series is just great, though. In fact, I just reviewed the second one that's coming out on Blu-ray. I just reviewed that on my YouTube channel. But yeah, the humor. I like how they get so much humor into it, along with the danger and stuff.
I'm good with a little humor mixed in with my horror. I
Yeah.
think if it's done well, I have seen times when it's not done well. I should point that out. But if it's done well, and I think that's one where, if a
Oh, yeah.
character would say something like that, they would say it. When there's horrible things going on around me, I make jokes. I do that. When I see people say people wouldn't react that in real life, I'm like, no, they do that because I do
Oh,
that. So that's how I deal. It's how I cope.
All right. Yeah, okay. My second choice is it's a zombie movie called Black Demons from 1991. And this is not the flesh-eating zombies. This is voodoo zombies. And it's taking place down in Brazil. And it's dealing with the old black magic, the macumba. And of course, never fails. You get a tourist that seems to be interested in black magic, so he gets this little medallion and he records one of the ceremonies. And then later on, where they're at this little villa, and he plays that recording again, and all of a sudden, six uh, slaves that they were hung and they come to life and they just start killing people. One has a sickle, the other one has a hatchet, and it's like it just goes. It's a I think it's like a Spanish and an American film because there's a lot of there's two American actors, a British actor, and the rest are from South America. And it's I watched this just the other night because I just wanted to remember about it, and it just I think in the 90s, and at least in the early part, they decided not to do a flesh-eating zombie movie. I think the 80s were so full of them, and of course nowadays it's like almost a dime a dozen that are out now. But they decided to veer away from the flesh eating and go back to the roots of like White Zombie and so, but update it to a point where it's like it's pretty graphic. A lot of the hook going into the people's eyes and talk about bad effects. That thing, you can tell it's not a person. Nowadays, they probably have the CGI so good that you'd be like, is that real? But then, you can tell. But it's just, it's the whole beauty of the movie. It's just, and it's got that early 90s synth music, kind of that is I could do without. It's I like the early '80s synth stuff, because it just had some character to it. Now it's like it's just so got too bombastic. I like it when it's just got enough. But yeah, it's a good one. I'm kind of surprised that this one hasn't been put out on Blu-ray, just the same as that other one, Frankenstein on Beck. I mean, those are perfect candidates. They definitely both need touch-ups. And that's my second one.
Get started on round 3. So let me do a wild carded. Okay. I'm gonna throw a trauma film in. I'm gonna go in with Frankenhooker. The title alone is already like in the same premise of like Jesus Christ Vampire Hunter. Then you have Frankenhooker. You're like, what? But I remember showing this at college when I was in grad school, and it was something along the lines of like, watch Frankenhooker tonight at this lounge. And I did get an extensive amount of people. They were like, I heard Hooker, I read Hooker, and I was sold. And over on the college campus. And so it is very much a movie that throws you right in. And it's by just the first scene alone, which you see is a brain with a little eyeball just losing it. As you have a guy that's like, yeah, just follow the hand, go with the motion. And you know what the heck's going on. So the one premise I love about this movie is that there's so many New Jersey and New York jokes that can, you know, kill a cat with. You know, all the nine lives have been used for the amount of New Jersey, New York jokes there are. So, premise of it is this um, plumber, but he's also like a holistic scientist, I would like to call it. And he's very much the line of, you know, William Franken. I feel like his last name is Franken. And he accidentally creates a lawnmower that apparently kills the girlfriend because of her own wittiness of turning on the remote and clicking all the dials and being right behind the lawnmower as it goes on. So she dies, and he's trying to buy, well, not trying to buy, he's trying to like find all these body parts to make the girlfriend again. And then no, he's like, I need the best body parts. What what body parts can I think of? He goes across the bridge over to New York City and finds some hookers. That's what he does. And he creates this very much it's like a jawbreaker, a comedic jawbreaker of crack. And he calls it his super crack. And during a scene where he's trying to measure out all the ladies' legs and all their body parts to find like the best, who's the best lady for his girlfriend, and he can't choose, and they get angry at him, and then find it was like a Ziploc bag full of this jawbreaker crack, and they all get into like a almost, it is an orgy of crack smoking and sex, and then immediately they all start exploding from the crack that they smoked. And he has all the body parts he needs, so he like trunks it all in a garbage bag and throws it over 3-story building of New York City, puts it in the trunk, drives all the way back to Jersey, and so on and so forth. And what's interesting is I feel like each character is living off of their own movie. And I would say that with like the mother. The mother seems so not like very, I think the word would be timid, because she just seems so lost of the fact that she's looking over at the brain that's freaking out in the fish tank. She's like, wow, you really outdone yourself, son. Do you want a tuna fish sandwich? And it's like she's in her own little world. And then there's a scene where the now assembled girlfriend, who now she's not really there because apparently with all the body parts she has, she can only say things that I get. Well, in the movie, it would be, you know, pickup lines of, do you want a date? Need some company? You want to hang? And that's all she says. And a few other lines too, based on the meetings of Dr. Franken. And there's a scene where they're at a bar, and this guy is just coming over to like trying to be all like, ooh, yeah, that's right, girl. And she's, you know, just saying all these lines, and he's going for it. He's like, oh, I'm playing with it. And no, and there's of course an excellent scene where, you know, exchange happens, and he's getting into it and all of a sudden his head explodes. Like his head pops off because of the electrocution coming out of her bolts and stuff. So it's very much, I would say it's very interesting one. And then another fun fact about this is that it's actually Bill Murray's favorite movie. So
Jeez.
Ghostbusters Bill Murray is like, yo, I love Frankenhooker so much. It represents New York in such a way I haven't been able to explain.
You're gonna
So,
love Chroma.
yeah,
I
would say
remember when it
that's
was
the
on
best possible.
VHS.
Hmm?
Did you ever see the VHS copy where
I've heard
press the
about
button?
the VHS copy. Is
I
something
had it
happened?
at one time. I
Yeah.
had it at one time.
Can you expand on the VHS, what it does with?
You press something on the box, and it goes. It does those taglines. Want a date? Need some company?
You lonely? You want some company? Want to hang?
Funny.
All those fun things. So, yeah, we have that. And now I'm actually going to quickly check because I love trauma so much. I had a friend that was in a trauma movie, and she's like, yeah, it's so easy to get in. You just ask Lloyd Hoffman.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, you want to be in my movie? Come in.
They're looking for warm bodies.
Exactly.
All right, Gary, you're up.
Okay, so for my third pick, from dusk till dawn. That's another one sort of like Psycho in that you can only see it the first time once. And I remember the first time I saw it, I was sitting there thinking, I thought this was supposed to be a horror movie. And it's like going on and on. It's just like a crime drama. And then all of a sudden, in a minute, it just completely switches and becomes a vampire movie. And yes, it gets a little over the top, but that's some of the fun of it. And hey, it's got Cheech Marin, so it's got to be fun, right?
Oh yeah. Hey, what was he like? Had several different roles in that.
Yeah, I think
What,
so.
like
Well, no,
three
maybe
of
not.
them?
He was like the bouncer at the outside, and then
The bouncer. He was a
and then
bartender.
it turns out he was actually a vampire.
Yeah.
After he got killed, he became a vampire. Yeah, I think he might have had another role or two, though. Now that I think about it.
Yeah. I remember one, or maybe it was a different movie. Had like long reddish hair in it.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that was part of it. I don't know. But yeah, that's such a crazy movie.
Oh, I know. It goes from one genre to the other, and it's like,
Exactly.
and I remember seeing it in the movie theater, and I was like going, okay, from dusk till dawn, it didn't. I was like, okay, it's going to be an act. This is going to be a typical heist movie type thing, and on the bloody side, on the, and I was like, okay, and all of a sudden, the bar, the titty twister. I
Everything
mean,
changed.
and but I also liked at the end where they kind of explained and how the camera was coming out, and all of a sudden it's at the top of an old Aztec
Yeah.
pyramid, and I like that idea. And then you see all the wreckage of other vehicles. I think what they probably did is after whoever they killed, they probably just like pushed all the vehicles off the cliff or something like that.
Yeah, probably.
But yeah, that was a good one. Sequels, not so much. The TV series was pretty decent. It was on what's his name, Robert Rodriguez's channel El Rey, and that was pretty decent. It kind of went back to the movie, but then kind of stretched it out a little. I think it stretched it out a little too much instead of maybe having like further adventures type of thing. I think I much would have rather seen them do that. All right, Bill, you're up.
Okay, so my third one is Ed Wood. I was already getting into Ed Wood movies by the time I saw the movie on his life and already knew some things about his life. And when I saw the movie, I mean, it does take some liberties with Ed Wood's real life, but it's pretty close anyway, for the most part. Probably the biggest change is his girlfriend in the movie, Dolores Fuller, played by Sarah Jessica Parker, um, does not exactly stay with him when she finds out that he's the cross-dressing director. Uh, um, she does actually. Technically they stayed together for a little while after she discovered that he was wearing women's clothes. But it did put a strain, and the last casket in their relationship was actually in their next movie, Bride of the Monster. This is the real life, not in the movie. Bride of the Monster, when Dolores Fuller was supposed to get the lead role, and he gave it to another woman because the other woman financed the movie. So, and that was the end of that. Something they should have thrown in the movie was that when Dolores Fuller leaves Ed Wood in real life, she goes on and writes an Elvis Presley song that makes her a lot of money.
Oh, wow.
That's just so ridiculous. It should have been in a movie. But Ed Wood is really good. It's got Tim Burton directs, and shoot, what's his name now? Why am I having trouble with names tonight?
Johnny Depp.
Johnny Depp, yeah, plays the lead title role of Ed Wood, and playing and Ed Wood really was friends with all those strange people along with him. Bela Lugosi, played by Martin Landau in this. He does an excellent job in there. And they really were friends. One of the only people from Hollywood who went to visit Bela when he was in the hospital recovering from opium was Ed Wood. And that was in real life, and it was in the movie. So that was fairly accurate. And it has Tor Johnson Tor Johnson was a pro wrestler from the 30s and 40s, just people don't know. And he's played by real life pro wrestler George the Animal Steele. And I'm not going to say George the Animal Steele is a good actor, but I will say the wooden, deep voice, terrible way that he delivers his lines it sounds exactly like Tor Johnson if you've seen any of Tor Johnson's movies.
Yeah.
So not exactly a stretch for Mr. Steele there, but it was a good choice of casting because he could pull it off without really having to act at all. And there was the scene where they got baptized to make Plan 9 from Outer Space. That's accurate. That's accurate to the real life because it was financed by some religious group. And the one catch they had was, if we're going to give you this money to make this movie, we want you to join our church, and so they baptized them in order to get the money to make that film. So that part was accurate. And of course, the end where they're making it with all the fishing line on the hubcaps to film the movie, of course. If you haven't seen Plan 9, that's pretty obviously accurate.
I have to say, so my first movie madness show was Plan 9 from Outer Space. That was my first movie showing, was that. And when it came to the scene, like there was the several scenes where, the spacecraft is going into the cemetery and it's going into the sky. My joke for that was like, oh, that's where my Marie calendar pop pie went. Because it literally just looks like a pot pie container, and they just flipped it, and they're like, "This is it. This is."
It probably was. Ed Wood was down on his luck by the time he made Plan 9.
He was the average college grad that had zero money, and they're like, "This will work."
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, a lot of these were supposed to be just smaller local films anyway that just blew up when they discovered a lot of things about Ed and his personal life. And what really actually set off Ed Wood and made him popular was when the Golden Turkey Awards book came out, and they named him the worst director of all time. It's like nobody heard of him, and then all of a sudden this book comes out, and oh, he's like the worst. We got to check this out, of course.
Right.
And now years later we have Razzies. So
yeah, and it probably inspired a lot of that. And I will go to my grave. The hill I will die on is Mel Brooks' first film, The Producers. The director they get when they're doing that is a guy who's a cross-dresser. the hill I will die on is that Mel Brooks knew something, and this is in the 60s when Ed Wood's still making movies and writing books, that he knew about this and threw that in the producers. Where else could you, how many of these could there be? How much of a coincidence could it be for it not to be inspired by his real life? But anyway,
that was a really good movie. Didn't Martin Landau get some sort of an award for his portrayal?
I think that's when he won Best Supporting Actor.
He had.
I'm sorry?
Because he was fantastic in that.
Yeah, I think he won Best Supporting Actor for that. And I've also read some Bela Lugosi biographies, and some of the Bela Lugosi's family didn't like his portrayal because they said their relative actually didn't swear as much as he did in the movie. But I thought it fit the movie fairly well, actually, even though they took that.
I feel like Plan 9 from Outer Space was just like some reason like a fan more, but also being like him embracing the fact he's like, I did Dracula once. You want to see the costume again? Here, let me take it out. He's just like, I'm good at doing this. Let me do that a few more times until I get killed off.
Pretty much.
It's pretty much.
Yeah, Lugosi had just gotten out of the hospital when they filmed that.
But now I feel bad for making that joke.
No, it's fine. But because actually they filmed that, but he told Bela that he had a movie in mind for it, but he didn't. He was just filming them just to try and help Bela Lugosi feel better about himself, because he was kind of down on his luck as well. And then of course Bela passes away, and it's about 3 years later that they finally made Plan 9 from Outer Space. And that was how Ed Wood sold it was, hey, I have the last remaining footage of Bela Lugosi. So this could be Bela's last film.
They actually sort of remade that movie. I don't remember what the year it was, but they just took out the silliness out of it, and it basically aliens come down and they reanimate the dead, and it's like,
they remade Plan 9, yeah.
Yeah.
I think they just call it Plan 9. That's all they.
It's not Plan B, it's Plan 9.
Yeah.
That was another joke I had there. But no, there's one scene in Ed Wood that it touches my heart to this day. Like if I were to go back and watch the movie and the scene happens, I would have to like replay it to watch the scene again. And it has to be the scene with the date at the carnival. And I think it was the carnival or something, the fair or whatnot. So they go on the haunted house ride in Ed Wood, right? Talking about things, right?
Yeah.
But it's a scene where he confesses, like, yeah, I wear women's clothes, and then she's trying to understand, and then being that acceptance of like, yeah, it's okay. You're fine, and I'm gonna like you either way, and it's very touching because it's like in the drag community having that acceptance and it's a true fear sometimes, because like for me, like it's that fear of like I would like to have someone in my life, but I also have this fear that if I tell them this person, they're gonna run away. So having that like a gloss of like almost like a mirror in a way of telling someone, because it shouldn't be that I'm going to change my thing because now I want this person in my life. It should just be like either this is what I do, it's not hurting anyone else, it's not hurting me, it's making me feel better, it's making me happy, and I would like to share that with you because I want to include you in that part of life. And so seeing that in Ed Wood and having that almost, and then having that, acceptance is very much, it's heartwarming, I would say the least. And, especially for even back in then because you had Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar, and then compared to what's going on now, it's still relevant in so many ways. And even if that movie is supposed to be in the 50s, it's a very ongoing story. It's acceptance in the 50s, acceptance sang in the 90s and the acceptance now. So
Yeah.
there you go.
I do know what yeah, that is a good scene.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's one that they took liberties with in the real life.
Yeah.
The
Alright.
real way that he told Dolores Fuller that he's a cross dresser was the movie Glenn or Glenda, showing her that movie where he plays Glenn and Glenda.
Yeah, Glenn and
Which
Glenda.
he directed and created and everything, of course, but having her watch that was actually the real way that he broke it, and she unfortunately did not take it quite as well as she does in the
Yeah.
movie. But I do agree with you that there should be acceptance.
Yeah. Alrighty.
All right. My third movie is Cemetery Man. This is another one of those movies that it goes out of print when it gets, especially on Blu-ray. It goes out of print so quickly. The minute, if you don't notice it that they put it out on Blu-ray, you blink and it's out of print. Then it's up on eBay for like $90 or $100, and it's like, no, I like the movie, but I'm not spending $90 on it. But this is another one. It has a little bit of a silliness to it. Just the guy, he's a cemetery keeper, and he and weird things are happening in his cemetery, and it's they're kind of like zombies, but not really, and it just you have to watch this one several times to kind of get all the little things in it, because they're just they pack a lot of information and situations in it. The graveyard scenes. He has this. At the time, they would call him a dumb character. That he's not. He's mentally challenged, basically. That he does everything that the cemetery guy tells him to do. And it's like, I really like it, and it has another name in Italy, Della Morte, or something like that. And I almost got rid of my DVD copy when I saw that it was Blu-ray, and then I saw the price, and I said, no, I'm keeping my DVD. Holding on to that until it comes out on Blu-ray, because it again, it's definitely one that needs at least from I haven't seen the Blu-ray picture of it, but it's one of my favorite ones from the 90s. It's like, it just has like a really almost gothic atmosphere to it, but then there's some silliness in it too, just but not like slapstick, but it just situational kind of comedy going on, just things maybe it has a little bit of slapstick in it, but it's mostly situational things. I mean, kind of, everyday life kind of stuff that happened to you that are, later on you see, oh, that was kind of funny, but it's like, it's a good one. I mean, I don't know. This is one of the ones I did see on VHS. I never saw it in the theaters, because I don't think they even played it in many theaters in the United States. Probably like in the big cities, if any. They're just a lot of those Italian movies. They never really played them. Especially the ones in the 90s. They never played them in a lot of towns. I know in the 70s and 80s ones, they played a lot, like in New York, on 42nd Street, all those grimy old theaters, that back in the day, where you probably can see all these different, what they call now, grindhouse movies. And yeah, that's my third choice.
Okay, I'll get back to round four then. So this one, okay, so I didn't have this on my list, but since I was talking about trauma in my last pick, I instantly had to talk about another one that is actually very close to home for me. So it is, well, all the other ones have been close to home, but this one's closer. So um, Vegas in Space from 1991. And I would like to say I'm kind of cheating here because it was filmed in the 80s, but the budget was collected because one of the main stars, but also the set designer, one of the producers, the makeup, the hair, Doris Fish, who was an Australian San Francisco drag queen, very prominent in the 80s. She, Mrs. X, who was also a co-star in this movie as the evil Queen Veneer. She's the queen of police. And oh my gosh, I lost track of thought there. So they all filmed in the 80s because the budget was so they were able to make do with trash. They were able to make do what they can find in the streets of San Francisco is what I would like to say. And because one of the famous lines that Doris Fish says while making the movie was that who said you can't make a movie on a hooker's budget, because that's how she was able to get the money to make the movie, was doing that. That her shows. So her, Mrs. X, and Tippy, who was also in this as uh, Princess. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna I need to look her thing up quickly. Oh, give me a moment. But the movie, it featured a lot of like drag queens that were very prominent in San Francisco, and unfortunately enough, the star herself, Doris Fish, passed away before she even got to see the completed piece of this film, as well as Tippy as well. And but that's one of the saddest things, is because unfortunately both Tippy and Doris Fish died from compilations of from AIDS. And um, oh my gosh, I'm going through the IMDb quickly right now. It's Princess Angel. There it is, Princess Angel, Tippy. And one of the credits is introducing Tippy as Princess Angel. And so introducing a film, it's supposed to be, a celebration of bringing out this new star into the film world. And then um, Tippy never got to see it either because she also died from compilations of AIDS as well. So this was very much a movie project from the 80s. It was inspired by a party by the queen herself. Ginger Quest had a huge party in San Francisco, and this idea about the movie, and pretty much it festered on into actually making the movie. And so what the movie is, it's about these three astronauts who have to go and find these rare gems on a distant planet known as Vegas in Space. And it's supposed to be this huge paradise of shopping and parties and sleepovers and glitter and makeup. But the only problem is that no males can ever enter the planet. And so, in the fashion of drag, they have to switch sex by taking these pills, and they are all in drag, which is funny because the four astronauts that were in there, one's a drag queen, the two are female, and it's also, but they're also in drag, and that's like the drag that I do. So I'm like, hey, representation really early on. And then the fourth one actually sung the theme song of this movie, and ended up actually killing off the character because they realized that he wasn't really much use for the rest of the movie. So they're like, okay, well, we can just kill you off. Like, you took 2 pills instead of just taking the 1 pill you're supposed to take. And that's how he dies. And I think it's really interesting is that this is such an underground movie. The fact that there was barely enough money. It took them, I believe, 2 years to film it, and it took them about 8 years to do post production, and so much funding. And the director who did this was like 22 years old that just graduated from college, and it was the first director that they found. They're like, "Hey, you just recently graduated, right? You need something on that CV that your your curriculum vitae. How about you go do our passion project?" So, and it's very much bringing in 50s sci-fi, and but also elaborating on gender and drag and whatnot. And of course, there's music in it. There's also a dream sequence, and the reason why they even have a dream sequence is so that Doris Fish can say, "Don't worry, honey. It's a bad dream sequence. Are you okay?" But yeah, this one I get close on. I love anything that involves with drag. I absolutely love it. It's just another form of self-expression theater, I would like to say, just like with Mask of whatnot. And exploring, I think, gender with that. And then putting that element of sci-fi. With sci-fi is just like with science and science fiction in general, it's elaborating on what is real and physicality, and but also in premises of ideas that expand on futuristic theories of whatnot. So having that in mind about like what could be and what we see in ourselves and whatnot. So elaborating that with sci-fi and then putting drag into it, I feel like it's like putting, chocolate and peanut butter together. It's just gonna taste good at the end. So that is my fourth movie.
Yeah, trauma put out a lot of those kinds, just different kinds of fun movies out there. I think my very first one was Toxic Avenger. Watching that one, and then was it Class of Nukem High, and
I have yet to see any of those, but I just know recently Peacock actually got a bunch of trauma films, which is astounding to me. But I also know it's because the Toxic Avenger is having a reboot, and like Peter Dinklage is in it, Elijah Wood's in it. It's like, excuse me, but I'm excited for it. But it's also like, that's so weird that now it's being like a Hollywood reboot.
Right.
Yeah.
And the other one that I saw that was Surf Nazis Must Die. All right, you're next.
Okay, so my fourth movie, this one's maybe kind of an obvious, kind of a popular one, but Craft. I mean, how can you go wrong with that movie? Everything was perfect with that. You get the whole, mean girl group kind of thing going on, and then bring in the witchcraft and then the dark side and the whole battle, and the music was amazing. And it's a movie that just holds up so well today, I think.
Yeah, I like that one. And I think they did something recent with it too.
Yeah, the Craft Legacy, and I saw a lot of people, go on about, how it's so terrible. I actually thought it was pretty good. You're never going to touch the original, but I thought it was really good.
It's always hard to touch the original,
Yeah.
And that was a good one. That was a very popular one. One of my brother's exes was into the whole goth scene, and so she was like going, "This is like my movie," and it's like, and I kind of liked it that it played with the good and evil of witches, because unfortunately most of the public sees, when they hear witch, they think of them as Satan worshipers, and they're not.
Yeah,
You know,
you're not
so
evil.
it's no, they can be,
Yeah,
but just like
Typically
anyone
not.
else can be evil.
Yeah, actually, I just finished reading Rosemary's Baby, and they conflate that. And actually, I wrote that on my Goodreads review. Was that yeah, witchcraft is actually very different. Actually, it was in medieval times that they started conflating witchcraft with Satanism because they were trying to convert people to Satanism. And real witchcraft was basically just nature worship, kinds of things that happened before Christ, like
Right.
multiple polytheism and things like that. So it was really a marketing ploy, is how the whole witchcraft is Satanism, how that got confused. And it's, when I was reading the book, I was like, I can't believe this is the 60s, they're still doing this.
Right.
But I still like the book, though. I should point that out in the movie. But
Oh, yeah.
that was my one issue with it.
All right. What's your number 4?
Okay, my next pick. I'm going back to the comedy type stuff. Mars Attacks is a really fun movie. There are more movie references, Easter egg movie references in that thing than any other movie ever made, except maybe Rocky Horror. And I'd like to see the count on that, because it might just rival it. I mean, they just reference everything from the Z grade Plan 9 to War of the Worlds to, I mean, and in the one line that's my favorite, they actually combine Plan 9 and War of the Worlds when the newscasters, calling the action like War of the Worlds, and says the spaceship has just taken off like a giant, and she paused, hubcap. Like, you know what they're referencing, right?
Right.
But they just hit everything, and you have Jack Nicholson in like I think a triple role, and I got Sarah Jessica Parker in there again, didn't I? Pierce Brosnan, and they wind up as the heads on the spaceship, and it rolls around and wind up kissing each other because their heads are just rolling around in the spaceship. It's a lot of fun. I think Nicholson playing the triple role was probably a reference to Dr. Strangelove, I would assume. Just
I think so.
I like to just, I like to find those Easter eggs, and I'm sure I'm probably missing a ton of them as well. But it's a lot of fun in that movie. And I used to love the ads too. And yes, Tom Jones, like he's a big name.
Right.
He does have one of the top roles, surprisingly.
Yeah, that's a fun movie. I mean,
it is. I mean, I don't know what you can do for 90 minutes and have more fun than watch that movie.
right. Well, the great thing is, I mean, if you're going into it thinking it's going to be a straight film, you're mistaken. I mean,
right.
I mean, the aliens, the Martians. Look at what they look like. They look like almost.
Yeah,
like
they have like the big globe on their heads and And I love the part where the army's trying to figure out what to do with them, and they send a nuclear bomb after him. They grab it and they like inhale it and talk funny like it's a helium balloon or something. Kills me. I think I was annoying everybody else in the theater. I was laughing so hard at that thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think I saw that in the theater. If not, I know I saw it on video.
yeah, I know I saw it in the theater. I was afraid I was gonna get kicked out. I was laughing so hard, actually.
You're having fun.
Yeah, I was maybe a little too much. That's a good one though.
Yeah.
And there actually is a 1950s movie called Mars Attacks, actually, and I actually haven't even seen that one, which has been on my list to see, just because I knew this was made after it. I don't know how similar it is. Like I said, I haven't seen it, but there is a I believe 50s or early 60s anyway movie that is called Mars Attacks.
All right. My next choice, my number 4, is actually celebrating its 60th anniversary this year, and it's Doctor Who the movie. I love it. It's got mixed reactions to it because it was a half American, half British adventure, and also without spoiling, I'm sure people must have seen it that are fans. You know, where he says that, you know, he's human on his mother's side. I mean, I don't know what they were trying to go for there, but I kind of blocked that out. But the regeneration from Sylvester McCoy to him, I mean, that was one of my favorite regenerations. I mean, they used a lot of, you know, the CGI, morphing the face and morphing the voice and everything. And I thought it was really cool that they actually involved the last Doctor, you know, in it, instead of just all of a sudden having him go around. And I like that it seems like every regeneration this guy has, something different happens to him. And then here he completely forgets who he is. And he has that line, you know, who am I? You know, and it's like very dramatic. And of course, Paul McGann was wearing a wig because at the same time, I think he just finished doing Alien 3, so he had a shaved head for that. And so, I mean, you know, later on we had Christopher Eccleston he had kind of basically a butched hair. But before that, you know, it's like the Doctor having that kind of a haircut? No. We got to put him in that wig, and it's taking place in San Francisco. I want to say, even though it was done in '96, I think it was taking place 1999 going into 2000. So, and it had this clock that the Master, who was played by Eric Roberts. I mean, I think that's another reason why a lot of the older fans didn't like it, is because the Master was played by an American actor. And it was just a simple story, and the way they ended it, it looked like, you know, you knew this was made for TV, so they were going to make a series in 1996 on Fox, and it just the ratings were god awful, you know, and it just I think it got shelved for the longest time, and then the BBC bought it back or something. And but I did like in recent times that they kind of gave him the Eighth Doctor. They kind of gave him a little bit of a backstory as to what happened between 8 and 9, and there's a strong rumor out there that they're actually going to do a series with him.
McGann denied, but then again, they will deny that kind of stuff.
Oh, especially like owned by Disney too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're gonna, because with the, you know, the 60th anniversary, and now that in everywhere but England and Ireland, Doctor Who is going to be on Disney Plus. So Disney's involved. So, you know, they want to have spin-offs. So one of the spin-offs that they're talking about is, you know, giving Paul McGann, the Eighth Doctor, an actual series, even if it's just one series, just to kind of give him some adventures, you know, and they might do other ones, you know, other spin-offs too. But this is a fun one. I remember, again, this is another VHS one that I actually owned on VHS many years ago, and this is the Blu-ray is what I did a trade with Gary,
yeah,
because he couldn't play this on his machine, so I had the DVD, so we just did a swap. You know, it's good. It's good. It's a good one. I like it. I mean, it's a nice bridge between classic and then what they call new.
And a lot of people seem to think it doesn't really fit with the show, but like your thing about human on my mother's half or whatever, or mother's side, that you could explain that away, and that the doctor lies sometimes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I mean, I think it does fit with Doctor Who. I mean, Doctor Who did crazy stuff over the years.
I was gonna say, like, look at David Tennant and then look at the Eighth Doctor. It is literally the same character profile of like whimsical,
Oh
like
yeah.
giddy, and then getting excited and about these things and stuff.
Oh
They're
yeah.
like, that's not the Doctor. And then what was it? You said 96. Okay, well then 10 years later, they have David Tennant coming in.
Yeah. Basically. And
You had me at David Tennant. He's not only my favorite Doctor, but my favorite actor. So
Oh, he's brilliant.
yeah, I love him.
yeah, they actually were saying that he's the most famous of the doctors, but I think he's the most famous of new Who.
The new ones, because I think
Tom Baker is famous of the classic era.
He was the
He
one
had the longest tenure.
longest, too.
Um,
Practically a decade.
Yeah.
I would say Tom Baker's probably the most famous.
Yeah,
Doctor.
Tom Baker.
Maybe of the new ones, though. You could be right.
Yeah, he was the longest one, and actually they said that towards the end he was actually kind of begging them, I'm kind of getting tired of this, this character.
He was done a while before.
Yeah.
I heard he was miserable the last couple years.
Oh yeah. Especially when they changed his scarf and his whole getup it was all burgundy.
Yeah.
Can't change the scarf. Come on.
Yeah, no, that's iconic.
I know.
You gotta have the scarf.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I have the hat and stuff right around the corner here.
I need to get the hat. I got something similar to it, but not really.
The one I got was advertised as a Tom Baker hat. It has a little BBC thing in the middle, tag inside of it.
Yeah. One of these days, I want to get as close to, like the trench coat and everything.
Oh yeah.
And just, I mean, I had a trench coat at one time, but it was all black and but it made the scarf pop out. All those colors kind of pop out, so it was kind of cool. So that's my number 4.
Alrighty, so number 5, I would have to say would be Troll 2. And I'm saying this as I'm burning lavender in my hand, so I'm gonna quickly drop that back into the candle, or just give me 1 second so I don't burn down my apartment. Just a little witch hack I learned. Okay, that's bad. Alrighty, I'll fix that later. So Troll 2, made in 1990. Troll 2, for anyone knowing, it's definitely not the sequel to the first movie. It's a completely different movie. And the amount of stuff that I learned in a short span of my last movie madness was doing Troll 2, and it was hosted by my good friend Clams Casino, who that's actually her favorite movie, like bad movie, is Troll 2. And I never saw it until the day before our show, just so I can get a premise of it. And oh my God, coming in, the best way to view this movie is to go in with no expectations. Like, don't even read the Wikipedia, don't look up anything. You just have to go in fully blind. And I it is very much a movie that you will, if you get into the premise of this is just so like, it's not so stupid, but more of the fact of like this is so silly, that you're gonna have the best time in the world. Especially in the one scene where it's very famously known is, and I won't let anyone piss on hospitality. I won't allow of the scene where, so the basically the premise of Troll 2 is that family goes away to a different household because there's this thing called a house exchange or something, where one family goes into live in the house of another family and then vice versa. And they get to this very, I jokingly say it's Hancock County of a city. And so it's very much like everyone's very awkward. They also don't eat meat. They even have like a church service that's down in an abandoned barn about how grotesque meat is. And they only eat vegetables. And they drink milk. They drink milk and eat vegetables. And so they arrive at this house, and the family prepared this meal for them, which is like bread with green frosting. And they're like, this looks delicious. There's corn with green frosting. They're like, yeah, this looks so good. And the young boy that's in this family is already like dealing with a lot of like personal issues, such as the grandfather passing away apparently recently, and the grandfather visiting the boy and telling him not to eat the food because if they do, they're gonna turn into goblins. And here's the big twist. The movie's called Troll 2, but they're all called goblins. That even the name of the town is goblin spelled backwards. And that was the whole twist of it. So apparently the grandfather now has the ability to stop time because he's like, I will be able to stop 30 seconds. And the 30 seconds is like 2 minutes. And you need to make sure that the parents and your sister don't eat that food. So grandpa stops time for somehow. And the kids pondering around looking up as the parents are about like the second away from eating. Also make the actors just making sure they stand still. And you think of all the other things you would personally do, like you would throw the food in the trash, you would probably pull the tablecloth off and the food will fall on the floor, you would probably, make the food disgusting in one way. And sure enough, he made it disgusting by, it's the weirdest editing ever of, I mustn't do it. I have to. And it's just him. It's like the second of this boy going onto the chair and unzipping his pants and it cuts. And you can fill in the blank of what he did. And you're like, no. And I did yell, oh, when I first saw that, because I was like, you gotta be kidding me. So apparently too, with how low budget this movie is that it was filmed by an Italian director who did not speak a word of English and wrote the script too. And the script was written in like broken English so that when the actors had to read the script, they couldn't quite understand it. And so when they asked the director if they could just ad lib some of the lines, the wife of the director, who was the translator, would talk to the wife and saying, no, this is my movie, we're doing it this way. And so if the lines are very weird, it's weird for a reason. And granted, in his defense, English is not his first language. So but it's just so weird though when you have the older sister saying, "Are you gonna bring your boys with you? Because if I see those boys, then I'm never talking to you again." And it's very much he's like, "No, but I need my boys and his friends." I'm like, "Yo, the boys." He has to be with the
Didn't
boys. So
didn't the kid have some? They did a meme where he's like yelling out "No" or something like that.
there is a meme, yeah, of a scene where this one of the boys finds like this church where it's like this very witch of the goblins lives and works at, does her spells and stuff, and she's comforting them by giving them a potion, which turns out she's evil, so the potion turns them into this gooey vegetable mess so that way her goblins can eat that mess. And the guy's reaction is the meme of they're eating her and they're gonna eat me. Oh my god! It came from that movie.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
apparently too, the father that's in the movie absolutely loves when people like approach him, like they go to the grocery store and they approach him, they're like, "Hey, are you in that Troll 2 movie?" He's like, "Yes, I'm in that movie," and he's so like ecstatic of people acknowledging that he was in that. So even like coming up to him and saying, "I won't have you piss on his hospitality. I won't allow it."
Yeah, there was actually a documentary called Best Worst Movie about it.
Yeah,
And they
isn't the guy who plays the young like brother directed the movie.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and they were talking about that thing where it's like trying to communicate with the director was just it was so difficult because did a lot of like hand signals as to what he wanted people to do, and
Right.
but I agree it is the best worst movie ever. All right, Gary, your last one.
Okay, so my final one, as I know I've talked about in previous episodes, I'm a huge John Carpenter fanatic. So it's the only John Carpenter on this list, though. Vampires, which is actually also my favorite vampire movie of all time. In part just because the vampire Valak is just so um he's just so, I don't know, so crazy scary. It's like I remember I love the opening scene, and this is just giving away the beginning. So that movie's been out forever. So but the opening scene, you see these guys and they're a vampire hunting team, and they're going in to take out a nest of vampires. And these guys, it reminds me of the scene in Aliens where the Marines come in and then just think they're all badass and just get their asses kicked. Because these guys go in and they've got all this equipment and they take out the vampires, but they can't find the head of the whole hive. And they're like, okay, it's a big celebration though. We won. We killed all these vampires, and they head back to their hotel and they're partying at the hotel, and a knock comes on the door, and they open the door, and it's the master of the hive of vampires, and he kills them, just pretty much all of them, except for like two guys get away, along with the girl who was the entertainment for the guys. And they manage to get away and have to figure out how to defeat this vampire. And it's like, I just love that whole juxtaposition of these guys who were just overly confident and just like, yeah, okay, we did our job. And then all of a sudden they're just completely outmatched. And it's, I there's something about that I've always really liked in movies.
Oh yeah, that was a good one. I like the whole idea of the vampire hunters because it kind of goes back to for me, it goes back to Hammer films when it was
Yeah.
what's in it? Count. Oh, I can't remember his name. Vampire Hunter. He
Yeah.
and it was it just just the idea of, okay, going on the offensive instead of defensive, and then like you said, oh, we're overconfident, we did it, yeah, and boozing it up and probably other things going on, and so their faculties aren't all there, so they're easily slaughtered. I like, and they made a sequel which was pretty decent. I mean, it had John Bon Jovi in it. That one was pretty decent, but the first one, that I think he didn't want to do this a sequel, so he just kind of stepped back or something.
Carpenter's not big on sequels. He's done
No.
what? I think he only did the one for Escape from New York.
And Halloween 2, yeah.
Oh yeah, he did. Oh, he actually did the first 3 Halloween movies. Although he
Yeah.
wasn't sold on the second one and then the third one, but we talked about that in the previous episode.
Oh yeah.
Gary, I don't remember you mentioning. Gary, I don't remember you mentioning that you're a John Carpenter fan. I don't know.
Oh, John Carpenter fanatic. I love John Carpenter. Oh, gotcha.
I was just anyway, my last film. I had 2 that I wasn't sure which one was. I think I'm gonna go with because I've been in kind of a hagsploitation kick lately. I'm gonna go with Lake Placid. The alligators in the river, and you have Betty White. I'm trying to think of how I can say this without giving away the spoiler. But anyway, connect the dots right there, right? Not your traditional hagsploitation, obviously, which started in the 60s, but yeah, Betty White comes back, slumming it in this one. It is early CGI. Take it for whatever you feel like it is, because it is 90s CGI, but it wasn't a bad movie. Again, you have big monsters attacking people and eating people, and that's all I need to be entertained for about 90 minutes. So it was a fun little movie, based in the woods this time and everything. That was my last one that I thought I'd bring up.
Yeah, I like that one. I like how some of the people were killed off, and was it John Voight plays this kind of a nut? Well, I guess when does he not play a nut? Just almost every movie he does, he's got some sort of a nutty vibe to. This one, I think it was over the top.
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of people are a little over the top on that one, but I think that's kind of the point. So it makes it fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like, great monster movie, throwback to the 50s and 60s type, Again, one of those movies you don't take seriously. If you do,
right.
You got something wrong with you,
Right.
Yeah, that was a good one. All right. My last choice, I'm going to kind of go way away from horrors and sci-fi, and I'm going to pick Copland with it's got an all-star cast: Stallone, Keitel, Liotta, and De Niro. This one didn't do that well because Stallone, he went in the opposite of what, he's always this guy that, he'll shoot him up and sit, and like the action hero. He put on, I think it was 40 or so pounds, and he plays a sheriff of this thing, of an area that they call Copland for in New Jersey. All the cops, they're New York NYPD, and so he got held over because he had, I think he had a hearing issue, so he couldn't pass the, the criteria to be an NYPD. So he's just the sheriff of this little town, and he's like a total pushover for these cops that they are so dirty, you know. It's like all these characters. It's like they're always just bagging on him. You know, oh, you know, you can look the other way while we do these things, and then I think towards the end of the film, it's like something set him off, and he tries to arrest him. He gets a gunshot across the bad ear, and all of a sudden he's got this ringing, and you know and so he's kind of disoriented, and he's trying to shoot, and he basically takes them all out, but he does it in I want to say a John McClane type of way, where he's not this action hero. He's just basically, it's like, I got to do what I got to do. And it didn't do that great in the box office, which is unfortunate because it's a really good movie. It's a good drama, good cop drama. Like I said, great cast. I mean, that's pretty much an all-star cast right there. Yeah. It's kind of nice to see that, was it Keitel and De Niro back together in this one. So yeah, it's a good one. If you haven't seen it, that's one to maybe check out if you like crime dramas, you know. And I got this at this movie at Dollar Tree back when they had good movies in their little movie section. I mean, I saw that now. It's like going, I saw that in the theater. I saw that there, $1. I mean, can't go wrong right there. So yeah, that's my number 5. So yeah, you know, I think we did a pretty good show. I think. I mean, everybody had different choices, which makes it even better, because then anyone out there that wants to see 90s cult films, they got a nice choice, nice selection. You know, comedy, drama, sci-fi, horror. You know, so I want to thank everybody. I appreciate, you know, and Jen, Bill, and Gary, you know, and I appreciate you guys taking out the time to do this, because this is I've been wanting to do these type of shows for a long time, and I could just never get it off the ground. And then when I spoke with Gary about it, he was like, "Oh yeah, you know, I didn't even know to ask him until." And I'm kind of glad, because you know, you get a lot of these things that they always talk about, the usual suspect movies. You know, everyone talks about the Friday the 13th and, you know, the Freddy's and stuff like that, but no one talks about the movies that we just talked about, you know, and it's kind of nice to let people know that there's something different out there for you to watch. So, again, I thank everybody.
Yeah.
And I had fun, and
It was a lot of fun.
It was fun as
Yeah.
always.
yeah, so any last ideas, words, you know, honorable mentions?
I would just, for me, it's just live long and prosper. So that's my fun.
There you go.
If anyone's curious, the other movie that I had in mind was Blair Witch. How much flack was I gonna catch for that one?
I thought about that one too. Funny thing is, I went to see that in the theater and I got motion sickness from it and had to walk out. But so I can't watch it except on the TV because if on the huge screen it just gives me motion sickness. But
Oh
that
yeah.
is such a fun movie. That's a great movie. I came very close to putting that on my list too.
Oh wow, you were the one I was actually predicting might give me some flack for that one, actually.
No,
So
that's
I'm
a
glad to hear that you like that one. It gets
The
really gotten this backlash in recent years, and I don't understand it. I think it's a great film.
Yeah, it is a
Yeah.
good movie. It's a little slow, but
Uh,
slow burns are fun.
yeah, and the one that I didn't bring up, and I think it's in the 90s, is Mallrats.
I don't get little rats, but
Mallrats.
yeah, I don't get it.
Jay and Silent Bob movies. They had in that movie they had a joke where the guy wipes himself and shakes the guy's hand, and then the guy for the rest of the movie is like he's getting sicker and sicker. It's like, I mean, it's just a campy movie, but I was like going, no, I have some ones that I want to talk about more than that. But that was one of the ones that didn't make the list. So the next episode is going to be Christmas horror with I want to also include some of any of the other winter type, or like there's some New Year stuff. It'd be kind of cool. Talk
We
about
might have
those
to.
too.
There's not a
Yeah.
big pool,
Yeah.
but we'll find it. We'll get there.
Oh yeah. So again, I appreciate everyone showing up on a Friday night.
Totally. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, you're welcome.
As always.
Thank you very much for watching this episode. All right, well, thank you again, and I'll talk with you all soon.